Ladies and gentlemen, dear faculty, dear students, dear alumni, dear friends of the MCI of the UC Berkeley and Koźmiński University in Warsaw, let me express a very, very warm welcome to all of you, and let me express what a pleasure it is to have you here together in the studio with us. It is a true honor, pleasure, and also a privilege to welcome you to our joint online Livetalk with a personality who has revolutionized and shaped Europe in a way like very, very few people have done in the last century. Let me express our sincere gratitude to the founder of Solidarność, the later Nobel Prize winner and President of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Lech Walesa. A very warm welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Dziękuję bardzo, cieszę się bardzo, że pamiętacie.
Thank you very much.
Mojej trudnej walce.
Delighted you still remember this difficult fight from years ago.
Ale pamiętajcie, że to było połowę
But remember,
tej walki.
but this was just the first half of
otwarcie
what I was doing.
możliwości na
Well, there are still so many obstacles that we have to remove. I was as if opening the way towards a better world. And now I think it's up to the next generation and maybe up to you, more democratic countries, to continue this fight. We've done, I think, what was to be done. We have won, yes, but now it's up to you, the next generation, and to perhaps Western countries to succeed again and build our common future.
Thank you so much for expressing such a warm also invitation to fight together with you. And now let me express also or extend my gratitude and my welcome to our academic partners, our friends at UC Berkeley in California. It's early in the morning there in San Francisco, or actually in Berkeley on the campus. Let me welcome Mr. Jeroen de Wolf. He is professor and the director of the Institute of European Studies at UC Berkeley. And he sits together, and he can be seen also on your screens. Mr. Jason Wittenberg, he's the director of Slavic, East European and Eurasian Studies. And also let me welcome and thank me for being with us to Mr. Bartosz Walecek, who does the translation. We only can hear him. So thank you all for being with us. And now let me start with a little intro video which will show a bit of the history which we have the gratitude of now having built the freedom and democracy on this basis. What a truly touching video, bringing memories to life again. We all have been experiencing this history, this part of the history, sitting in front of our TV sets for almost a decade to follow what will be happening the next day. Now let me pass on the word to our friends at UC Berkeley. I think it's on you, Jeroen, to take over and bring in the first question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andreas. And allow me to first of all express my gratitude to President Walesa for being with us today, and also to MCI and to you, Rector Andreas Altmann, for inviting us to join today's event. We feel truly honored to be today with Nobel laureate Lech Walesa. And in my first question, I would like to focus on the importance of the transatlantic relations. In February of this year, US President Biden visited Europe, made a surprising appearance in Ukraine, but he also decided to give a speech on transatlantic relations in an EU member state. And the member state President Biden chose to give his speech was not Germany, nor was it France, it was Poland. And President Biden's decision to give this speech in Poland has been interpreted in the US media as a sign that Poland has come to acquire a crucial role in the transatlantic relations between Europe and the United States. And my question to you, President Walesa, is how do you assess the overall cooperation between Poland and the United States and the importance of the transatlantic relations between Europe and the United States?
Wydaje się, że
Well,
są wzorowe.
it seems that the current situation, the current relations are very good because the President of the United States understands that
uciekła do NATO, do Unii
Poland
Europejskiej.
decided to join NATO and the
Gdyby nam się nie
EU,
udała ta
running
ucieczka,
away from some dangers
Rosja
and
by napadła
threats
na
of
Polskę.
Eastern Europe. If we had not succeeded, I think perhaps now Russian would be actually invading Poland, were we not in the EU and NATO. And now, of course, we are observing the situation in Ukraine. We don't know really what would have happened had we not been part of NATO and the EU. Now it seems that we in Poland, many of us think that we somehow managed to run away from Russia as if joining NATO. And if we were not part of NATO, Russia would probably be invading Poland right now. When I was still the President of the Republic of Poland, I was hoping we would be joining Poland, but also Belarus and Ukraine joining NATO at the same time. But I thought that I would be working on that during the second term of office. But as you know, I lost the elections after the first term of office. If I were to be president again, if I were elected for the next 5 years, I think the current situation would be very much different. Ukraine and Belarus would be already part of NATO and the European Union. This is what I was going to focus on. Unfortunately, it was not possible. So I think the President of the United States knows where we are, where we were before, we as Poland, and realizes that we are doing our best for Ukraine, because Ukraine, as if has been attacked, and Poland, luckily, is on the other side.
Thank you so much. Now, before passing on or moving on to Jason Wittenberg, I would encourage the audience in the live stream to also bring in questions, and the easy opportunity, if you want to send an email to livetalk@mci.edu. I repeat, livetalk@mci.edu, and the questions will come in on my computer, and this is the reason why I once in a while look down on my screen to do my best to bring the questions in. But now let me, as I said, let me move on to Jason Wittenberg to bring in the next intro question.
Thank you so much, Andreas. I'd like to echo Jeroen's gratitude for the invitation to participate in this. It's it's really amazing. I've studied Eastern Europe my entire career, and so it's a special pleasure for me, in particular, to interview President Wałęsa. So my first question concerns a statement you made in Gdańsk on the 40th anniversary of the Solidarity strike. You told a crowd of gathered people that the populists, and by that I think you meant the Law and Justice Party in Poland, correctly diagnosed today's problems, but that their cure is wrong. So my question to you is, what are some of today's most important problems that the populists correctly diagnose? And if I could ask you to identify one particularly important one, what is your preferred solution that is different from that of the populists?
Thank you. Well, I'm quite sure that you know how hard our way towards freedom was for us in Poland. We were fighting for freedom, and we decided to build a democratic country with a division into 3 pillars, which is part of our constitution, of course, regarding the division of power. It was not perhaps accurate enough. We didn't have many experiences with that, but this is what we were trying to focus on, a proper democratic division into the 3 pillars of power. But perhaps we didn't do enough thinking about next elections. Demagogues, populists are now damaging this structure and the 3 pillars into which we have divided the democratic structures of the country. This very much is the problem now. We do not have a proper division into the three pillars. The executive is trying to dominate the other two pillars. When I was president, well, of course, there were some institutions that were limiting my plans, my ideas, perhaps, but I never thought at that time that I should fight those institutions, liquidate, remove some of those. I was always trying to find a way to work together with them, while the current Law and Justice Party is trying simply to remove barriers, remove obstacles. There are new ones appearing, of course, and again, they are removing different democratic institutions. This is the way towards dictatorship, unfortunately. So everything, in my view, that is wrong in Poland very much goes back to the law and justice, destroying, damaging these three pillars of democratic power. We have to be aware of that. At the same time, we have to tell the world, the democratic world, well, go to elections, think carefully whom you elect, because, again, if you are not careful there, you can end up with similar problems that we are having in Poland.
Now, perhaps I may bring a question from my side. Now, you've been mentioning Europe with respect to Poland and also Ukraine. Now, what would be your expectation with respect to the European Union to deal now with the crisis, this brutal attack of Russia against Ukraine?
Well, I will go back perhaps to what I said before. For us, for our generation, we have been given two big tasks by fate. First of all, to damage the old world order that was created after the Second World War. It was impossible for the world to develop within this old order, but of course the second step was needed to build a new world order. And when we were fighting, demolishing the old order, we thought that the new problems that would be cropping up, the current problems of Europe and the world, we thought that they would be solved perhaps mainly by the United States for the whole world. And in Europe, we thought that maybe the Germans, the French and the Italians would be very active there, preparing new solutions for a new world order. We thought that they would also come up with at least two alternatives for different solutions of different problems. You mentioned the European Union. Well, if there is a need for action with the pandemic, we have seen that it's difficult to solve problems alone at the level of a national state. We have to build and continue building the European Union to work together at the level of continents or maybe globally, just as we did at the time of the pandemic. But I think more action is needed. One of my ideas at the time of the Solidarity trade union, I thought that the United States would play a leading role globally, and at the level of Europe, again, Germany, France and Italy, would be able to come up with some solutions, ideally two solutions to different problems. If, let's say, if we need reforms, then we can perhaps reform the old solutions, the old order. If not, we have to come up with something new. I think that, again, I stress the role of the United States, plus Germany, France and Italy in Europe. And also I think countries such as Hungary and Poland should also have a better say. Perhaps to remove some of the institutions at the level of Europe in order to build a new Europe, a new perhaps European Union, and say very clearly all countries can join the European Union, those that are willing, even those that perhaps were not working actively for the old European Union, but wanted to opt for a new union. But what really matters is that we have to, again, very clearly say a big poster, welcome Poles, welcome Hungarians, you will get some new rights in the new European Union. But there will be another poster, we welcome you most cordially, but there will be also duties. Of course, you have to come up with some rules, regulations at your national level, so that you will know how to behave in a community of nations. I think that's very simple, but it looks like it has not been done. Again, the United States are not perhaps willing to intervene in Europe, Germany, Italy, France, not doing enough here in Europe, unfortunately. So I think we are not ready, we are not prepared to solve those problems that we are facing our civilization today.
Mm-hmm. Now let me repeat, and in my invitation to the audience on the live stream to bring in questions, just send them. Drop me a note at livetalk@mci.edu. Again, livetalk@mci.edu. Questions will show up on my screen and I'll be happy to bring them in. But now again to our friends at UC Berkeley, what is your next questions?
Well, thank you, Andreas. And maybe as a follow-up to your question, I would love to hear the President's opinion also on EU membership. We all know that Poland has changed a lot ever since it became a member of the European Union. And we know that a commitment has been made by the EU Commission to Ukraine to also start a process of EU membership. We know that it may take years, if not decades, for Ukraine to actually become a member of the European Union. But my question to you, President Wałęsa, is what is your opinion on EU membership for Ukraine? And as a follow-up question, if Ukraine were to join the European Union, do you think it is realistic for us to hope that one day in the future, the same might happen with the neighboring states of Ukraine, namely Belarus and Moldova? Could they too become members of the EU? Would you say that this would be a positive evolution if they too would become one day members of the European Union?
Well, I'm, as you all know, a practitioner, and whatever I've managed to achieve, all my victories were very practical ones, due to my practical, not theoretical nature. And well, from the practical point of view, I think I can give the following answer. Well, the borders, the divisions in Europe have led to development that was not equal in different parts of the continent. And now, if we think about the unification, the problem is that there are some significant differences in the development of those countries. So they cannot be united very quickly. You have to take into account the level of development of different countries. In Poland, in the old days, as we said, some Poles would hijack planes to escape from Poland and go to Germany or Austria. And, well, still today, yes, Poland has changed, but still, well, we are trying to catch up with the European Union, and we are getting closer. We are not hijacking in Poland planes to get to Western Europe anymore. So now, well, what you can see in Europe very clearly, I think, first of all, you have to try to overcome those differences, help countries less developed to develop, catch up. You always, I think, have to analyze and check whether this is of benefit for both sides. Some of those countries joining the EU, those you mentioned, perhaps you have to come up with a list of advantages, disadvantages. I remember very well when there were many against Poland joining the EU. And I said, well, to my Western colleagues, you don't want us, but I'm telling you very clearly, we have to join the European Union, and we will sooner or later be part of united Europe. Tell me exactly what you don't like about us, and I will try to remove those problems, and sooner or later we will join the EU. Maybe this is the same approach for Ukraine that is possible. It's difficult. For many people it will not be comfortable. Well, for NATO, I think Ukraine fits into NATO. Brave people, good soldiers, maybe it would be easier for them to join NATO. But for the EU, well, the level of development is a bit different, economic processes slightly different. So again, yes, I'm very much for Ukraine as part of the EU, but we have to have a clear list, perhaps, where action is needed, because otherwise, maybe even for Ukraine, it would not be a good idea to join the EU, even more than for the EU. This is roughly what we are facing, I think, the main challenges and how we're going to solve them.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to continue on, Jason?
Yes, thank you. President Wałęsa, I would like to take you back to the early 1980s, not to the strike in Gdańsk, but to the martial law that came after it. Poland was in great turmoil at this time, and you were detained and held under, quote, special conditions, unquote. I'd like to ask you, what was your detention like during this period? What did the government, the Polish government, ask you to do during those first days of martial law? Did you fear that that would be the end of the Solidarity movement?
Well, I was perhaps the only one that it's going to be continued. It was not the end, but to be continued, I would say. It was quite clear for me from the beginning. Once I was detained, I said very clearly, you are losing actually at this moment, as if it's yet another nail to the coffin. I'm going to be the winner sooner or later. I actually even said, you are going to kneel in front of me, think about how to solve this problem. Maybe that was too much. I said too much, perhaps I shouldn't mention them, communists kneeling in front of me. That's what I said at that time. But still, as you know, our fight, our victory was very much linked to the development of the whole society. Remember, the invention of the bicycle helped people move and create perhaps regions, countries. Bicycles were enough 100 or 150 years ago. Now we have come up with other ideas, new ways to communicate, means of transportation, also the pandemic, another challenge. And now we know the structures have to be bigger. We have to think not at the level of a region or country, not in all situations, all cases, but let us try to find some solutions at the level of continents, perhaps, or global ones. So this is where the European Union is very much useful for us, and also NATO. Globalization in some cases is the right level. I mentioned earlier Germany, France, Italy, they should play a leading role in Europe, the United States globally. And again, try to find, this is my practical solution, find a group of wise people and give them a clear task. Look at the world as it is today, try to select some problems that can be solved at those levels, high levels, continental, global. Come up with a list of subjects, subject areas, topics. Think about what can be better solved at the level of a country, perhaps, what can be better solved at the level of the continents, and which problems to solve at the level of the whole globe. And then think again practically about the current structures that can be used to solve those problems. What are the funds available, perhaps, to tackle some of those difficulties? How to solve practical, again, how to find practical solutions to those problems. Yes, of course. Today, many people understand that, again, we have to cooperate, work at different levels. And again, as I said, there are differences, different level of development, different historical experiences, wars and so on. How can we work together if we have different experiences? And I have actually defined the first problem is what brings us together, what kind of foundation we can build on at the level of Europe. And when I pose such a question, what kind of foundation can we build for the new times? There are two fundamental concepts cropping up. Well, half of Europe want to build future on different liberties, freedoms, free markets, focusing on common legislation. And the other half of Europe today seems to be saying, no, this is not the right way forward. First, we have to come up with some values that we can share, and only later we can speak about liberties and common legislation. I think it's difficult for us to move on because we are still discussing where to go, which of the two concepts are going to, or is going to prevail. This is the first problem. And the second that I can see that I've defined, which economic system is going to fit into this cooperation at the level of the continents or global cooperation. When I present such approach, people speak about two main systems, the communist and the capitalist economic systems. Well, in theory, at least, communism, you might say, looks better. Justice and freedom. But of course, it's very naive. It's impossible, actually, to implement those communist, naive, idealistic ideas. It's just impossible. So, well, no way. Communist was never, in no country, successful in the world. But the young people sometimes, well, they see that it looks good on paper. Some young people think, yes, justice, something for all of us. Some young people still, they don't know it's something that must not be or will never be implemented. Some Western European countries, in those countries, young people choose communism because perhaps they don't realize that it's utopian. So as I said, well, capitalism perhaps is the only way forward. But again, capitalism was good perhaps for a divided world. Plenty of competition, not always just competition leads to unemployment very often, as you said, but I think we have to rethink capitalism. Remember, or keep the free economy, free markets, and in other areas to improve whatever can be improved, to tackle unemployment, of course, to help people find jobs. Let us do our best to help people find employment. It was difficult, again, at the time of competition, rat race, and so on. I think not enough attention was paid to those who needed some support. But I think when we speak about, again, action at the level of our continents or globally, I think we can do something to help the unemployed. Of course, if there are some people who are not healthy, not fit enough to work, not much can be done, but many people can work, and those who can should work, I think. This is a big challenge, I think, for all of us, for the United States, and for us in Europe here, mainly Germans, the French and the Italians. This is the second area that I've defined, and one more, the third, if I may, how to tackle demagogues, populists at, again, a supranational level. We remember the past, the 19th century, nationalist ideas, but also the role of God. This, in my view, is very important. We seem to remember about God more in the past. We are moving away from God, from religion. Decades ago, we were very much afraid of the Soviet Union, communism, but we managed to overcome those difficulties. So now the third challenge is how we can tackle again demagogues, populists. If there is nothing that stops them, actually, they can say anything, they can make any promises they want to. So I think these are the main problems, challenges for our civilization today. Again, the divisions into individual states, it looks like this is a thing of the past. We are moving towards globalization, but we are still only halfway through. The old system has been damaged, but now we don't quite know how to move forward. This is the time of discussion, I think, today, the time to discuss this future, how to build a better future. We have to come up with some structures, some programs, find new people perhaps who will be able to solve those practical problems I'm speaking about. Because as of today, as you know, demagogues very often prevail because they come up with some very easy solutions, very popular solutions, but it's not the right way forward. Well, the populist demagogues, sometimes we might realize that if we do nothing, they're going to set fire to our world, our countries. We should never allow this to happen. Even the division into the left and the right, those old divisions are not fitting into our contemporary world. Sometimes the left has some ideas of the right-hand political spectrum and vice versa. Very strange ideas, mixing up the old ideas of the left and the right. Those structures do not fit very well to our new order. Maybe the only legislation that is still fine are our traffic regulations. Well, traffic regulations are fine, but other rules and regulations, I think, have to be changed. Well, in the old times, again, also we had a problem of trust and confidence, but we have to, I think, be open to others, present our ideas. Can we convince one another to different ideas in an open discussion? This is a big challenge from my perspective.
Thank you very, very much, President Wałęsa. I have been receiving a number of questions, and now I'm in the difficulty of selecting those I think fit the best. And I see one from a former Fulbrighter at the MCI named Gordon Kraus. And he has expressed or sent me the following question. Now, I'm a former Fulbrighter at MCI, which was a wonderful experience in 2020. I have this question from Mr. Wałęsa. I, now quote, I was inspired by the description of your efforts to prepare young people to address the world's problems. How do you believe that university faculty can help to prepare students to embrace and influence the future with an awareness of the impact of their work on the world, perhaps in ways that faculty have not traditionally embraced yet?
dobrze odczytywać czasy, w których przyszło nam
Well,
żyć.
you have to read the signs of the times, and the times are changing all
Do
the
końca
time.
XX wieku interes
Until the end of the
najważniejszy był
20th
państwo
century,
kraju.
the national
Dla
interests
państwa,
were
dla
the most
kraju.
important. Whatever was good for the state was considered most important, and perhaps this was the level of the technological development at that time. But now the technology is showing us clearly it's not enough, this level is not good enough. Again, you have to build structures, global structures. There are some others saying that it's not at the level of a country that you have to act, but you have to act at the level of continents or globally. And now as for universities, I think universities are still teaching the way that they were decades ago. Well, I remember when I was a student at school, we were supposed to learn by heart, as if we were encyclopedias. You just had to learn some things by heart. Now it's very much different. You're not supposed to learn by heart today. There is so much information around that you have to know where to find information, not to learn by heart, of course. So you have to, I think, and this goes for universities, you have to, again, change your approach, change your way of thinking. I repeat, not national solutions, but continental, global solutions, because the main challenges, the main subjects, also related to the technology. Individual countries are not big enough for technological development. But of course, yes, there are some ideas where the states can manage well, but usually larger, bigger, higher structures are needed for further development. And well, as for some ideas, I mentioned demagogues before, they come up with old ideas, repeat the ideas of the past. But no, it's very much different. The world is one. We are all part of this common world. There are, of course, problems that have to be overcome. People have been suffering in different countries. We have to recognize that. But yes, we have removed almost all barriers in Europe, in the European Union. My father died fighting during our conflicts with Germany, and I'm now opening the borders. I cannot really imagine my father living here today. He would tell me, I actually died defending our border, and now how is it possible? There are no armies along the Polish-German border? Impossible, my father would say. But now it's quite clear for us that, well, we are closer to Germany. We are working together, cooperating. As I said before, it's very much the difference in the level of the development that leads to differences, to borders created. We have to overcome those barriers, build common structures. Our Solidarity trade union helped solve many problems. We participated in the demolition of the Soviet Union, the end of the Warsaw Pact. The Soviet army, as you know, there were many of them stationing in this part of Europe, in Eastern Europe. There are no more Russian Soviet soldiers in our countries, former Eastern European Soviet satellite countries. I remember in the old days, many were telling me, once you achieve something, stop there, you should not move on. But, well, as you remember, there were also weapons in many different Soviet republics. Some people were saying that if they become independent, they would start new conflicts. Some of the people in the Soviet republics did not know exactly what kind of weapons were stationed in those countries at the times of the Soviet Union. We had no idea in Poland whether nuclear weapons were stationed in Poland or not. And as we know, yes, there were Soviet nuclear weapons in Poland. I think Western European countries are better prepared for those challenges. You have longer traditions, longer democratic traditions, and I think you should play a more active role in finding good solutions. We did very well in Poland fighting, opening new opportunities, but I think you have a big role to play as the Western world, building new structures. So again, I'm old, I'm tired, but still I'm coming to meetings, trying to convince you. This is the big gift of history, and now you, Western Europe, you are responsible for what is going to happen later. You have to take this opportunity. There is a big opportunity, I think, open to us. Of course, there are challenges. China, Russia. Well, as you know, Solidarity movement, we had no single tank, no ballistic missiles, but we managed to prevail fighting with the Soviet Union. So it's not about weapons, it's very much about propaganda, trying to convince everyone living in Russia or in China, for instance, show them the attractiveness of the free Western world. Many Russians are dying in this war because of the internal situation in this country. country. We have to make it clear that democratic institutions have to be created in Russia or China. For instance, maximum, again, 2 terms of office, 5 years plus 5 years for the president of Russia or China, and that's it. I think this should be a very clear position that the whole free world should present to those countries. So we have to convince the Chinese and the Russians that we are trying to help them build democratic institutions in those countries. Gorbachev, I think, made a big mistake there, because President Gorbachev, he said that it's too late. The Soviet Union cannot be rescued when he became the first secretary. But he said, Russia, I will focus on Russia, building Russia, try to make Western countries dependent on Russia, gas and oil. He didn't change the system, where Putin, again, became president of Russia, trying to recreate the Soviet Union. But again, he made mistakes. Almost the whole world is against Putin today. It's a good opportunity, I think, to solve the Russian problem. And later we will going to solve together the Chinese problem. Not with tanks, but we have to convince again every Russian that if you don't act, you might perish as a soldier in a country with such a bad system. Your internal system is killing you. So once you change the system, Russia is a beautiful country. There are many good people in Russia, but they have no experience with democracy. They have no idea how they can build those democratic situations. Again, they have to be supported. We have to show them how to build a democratic country, to move away from the current situation.
Thank you so much. Not amen. We are not done yet with this session. Thanks for being here and with such a passion expressing your views and your conviction. Now, I have been receiving a question from Miss Anita Schmidhofer. She sits in Munich and asks about now solidarity in an international context regarding the neutrality of Austria. Is the neutrality of Austria, according to your view, still the right solution?
Well, neutrality was part of the old political system, as you know. There were 2 political blocs building those enclaves of freedom. But now, at the time of globalization, no, it's not a good idea. I think this has to be changed. So this is my idea. For Austria, also other countries, well, the world is changing. It is developing. It is opening up. But once we removed almost all barriers, borders in Europe, we have become even more successful. We should, I think, work together. So there is room for change, I think, here. Well, I think your country is going to play an even more important role if you move away from neutrality. You have an excellent democratic system, democratic experience, and excellent professionals. Again, to play a more important global role. Don't close yourself off from the outside world. I'm a practitioner. I know what I'm speaking about. You can play a very active role globally, as Europe has shown us. Remember, decades ago, big differences between European countries. Now it's changed. Well, Poland has changed so much as part of the EU that sometimes actually when I'm walking around Gdańsk, my city, it's changed so much. My city has changed so much that sometimes actually I'm not sure I'm going to find my way home when I go for a long walk, because the streets are changing so much. So, again, working together, not separating ourselves from the world around. Of course, thinking about ideas, what can be done quickly, what can be done perhaps slower, but the global world, this is what I stress, the world is beautiful. The borders, dictators, unfortunately, make our life more difficult, but I think we are succeeding slowly, step by step. Next question, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, from the live stream again to our friends in Berkeley.
Thank you, Andreas. And I look at the clock and I see that we don't have that much time, perhaps for one more question from Berkeley. So why don't I pass it on to my colleague Jason for the last question from Berkeley.
Okay, thank you. My question is related to your last answer about Russia. Poland has had troubled relationships with Russia since at least the time of the partitions in the late 18th century. Now, there's a difference of opinion within Eastern Europe and in Poland about the right approach to Russia. Everybody wants peaceful relations. The debate comes, not the Russians, I mean the Poles. The Poles want peaceful relations. The debate comes over the correct approach to Russia. Some people think that Poland should be more conciliatory towards Russia in order to ensure a cordial relationship. Others think Poland should be tougher with Russia, for example, the current government, in order to ensure this. And I'm wondering where you think Poland should be in terms of, its Russia policy.
Proszę pana, praktycznie to jest prosto.
Well, from the practical point of view, it's very easy.
Skomplikowane.
But, it's more complicated if you think about perhaps a more theoretical
I
approach.
teraz ja zapomniałem wątek pytania.
Well, I'm not sure I remember. Yes, I think I got it.
Cały świat
You're
był
asking about
zawsze
Russia.
podzielony.
Well, the world, as you know, has always been
Rozwijając się
divided.
technologię podnosząc, potrzebowało
There are
większego
technologies
wpływu, bo
developing, and
technologia
with developing
wymagała.
technologies, unification of different regions,
Wszystkie
countries,
państwa
continents
dzisiaj,
was
które
needed.
istnieją,
Different
powstały
countries
przez
around the
wchłanianie
world.
słabszych organizmów, słabszych państewek,
Many were
słabszych
created
grup.
taking
Prawie wszystkie, w tym i
by
wy,
some
i
invasion,
Polska.
perhaps,
Powstała
invading
często
weaker
niepokojowo
regions, weaker
włączając
countries.
całe
Very often it
regiony.
was not peaceful development, of course, but
Na koniec
military
XX
development and
dokładnie
military
widać
construction of
starą koncepcję
national countries.
powiększania
You can see
możliwości
also this
przez
concept,
rozwój.
I think, today,
To robi Rosja i Chiny.
where
Próbuje
Russia and
w starym
China,
stylu,
in the old
czołgami,
style,
strasząc
using
atomem,
tanks and
próbuje
missiles,
włączyć
threatening
Ukrainę.
us with their
W
nuclear weapons.
starym stylu
Russia today is
powiększać
trying to
swoje wpływy. To jest jedna
increase
koncepcja
their
widoczna na
influences
dziś.
invading
I
Ukraine.
druga
So this is
koncepcja
one
nasza
possible
zachodnia.
concept. And another
Przez
concept,
Unię,
Western,
przez NATO,
our concept,
przez
Western
ONZ,
world's concept, the
demokratycznie,
European Union, the United
wolnościowo
Nations,
robimy
democratic
struktury, które
approach,
powiększają
creating
je,
new structures
a Rosja i
that
Chiny
would help
zostały
us
starej
develop.
koncepcji.
And
I tam
simply,
jest
I think
pytanie
Russia and
takie.
China,
Która
they
na dziś
adhere to this
koncepcja
old concept.
zwycięży?
So now the
Czy
problem is
jeszcze
which
ta
of the two
stara,
concepts is going to
którą
prevail?
Rosja i Chiny
The
stosuje?
old concept
Czy już
used
ta
by
nowa,
Russia and China, or perhaps
nasza?
the new,
Jak
our
mamy
approach?
szansę po raz pierwszy
And I
w
think it is
historii,
perhaps for the first
mamy
time in
szansę, bo
history
Putin
that
popełnił
there is a
błąd,
chance. Again, I said that
zmobilizował
Putin
cały
made a
rozwinięty
big
świat
error. He
przeciwko
mobilized
sobie.
the whole developed democratic
Mamy
world
szansę
against
wreszcie
his regime.
zrobić
So now I
porządek
think
z
there is a
Rosją,
chance
a
for
potem
us
z Chinami
to
zrobić.
overcome the problem
I
of
prosta
Russia.
sprawa.
And I think later we
Nie
will also solve the Chinese
No,
problem. Again,
no.
not with tanks,
W stylu
not with our
Solidarności.
military, but in the
Już nie
style of the
mieliśmy
Solidarity trade union. Again, I
Ale
stress
pokojowo,
we had no
argumentami
tanks, but in a
powiedzieliście,
peaceful
krótko
way,
komuś.
with arguments.
Już na was pracować
We
nie będziemy.
told communists we are not going to
Okupujemy
be
się w
working
zakładach,
for
fabrykach.
you. We are going to
Wrzucicie nas
strike in
znowu,
our
ale
factories.
musicie, bo
Perhaps you will
wrócimy.
remove us from
I
those
znów nie
factories, but
będziemy
we will be
pracować.
back. We are not going to work
Przecież
for you
strajkami tym
for the
nie będzie
old
więcej
communist
chleba. No,
nomenclature.
ale mieliśmy albo walczymy i
Well,
zwyciężamy,
this was the
albo
option we
zostajemy
had.
pokonani.
We
Więc
either
powiedzieliśmy sobie,
fight
nie.
or
Tym razem
we're going to let
śmierć
them
albo życie.
overcome us. And we
Koniec
said,
z komunizmem.
death
No i
or life, we have to
wygraliśmy.
end communism. And
I tak teraz
we
zależy
prevailed at
od
that
was,
time.
od nas,
So
czy
now again,
będziemy
it's very much up to
solidarni,
you
czy
or up to
będziemy
us
czołgi
whether
musimy
we are
stosować
going to
dziś
remember about this
militarnie,
principle
no
of solidarity.
bo tam
Yes,
jest to
tanks are
militarnie.
needed because of the
Znak ile
military
potrzeba.
nature of
Ale
conflict in
ważniejsza
Ukraine.
walka
But again, I
jest
stress what is even more important is
Codziennie
our
prosimy,
propaganda.
słuchaj, Rosjanie,
Every day we
jutro
should try to
będziesz na
reach
froncie,
Russians.
jutro cię
Remember,
zabiją, albo
you
twojego
can end
syna
up as a
zabiją,
soldier. You
bo
will be
masz
killed
niedobry
fighting in
system,
Ukraine, or
bo
your
to system
sons will be
powoduje,
killed
że naczelnik
because you
państwa
live
robi,
in
co
a
chce z wami.
country
Robi
where
wojnę, wypowiada
you have
wojnę Ukrainie
a president
i
who
ciebie
can do
bierze
whatever
do
he
wojska.
wants to. There are no
Musisz to
limits to his
zmienić.
power.
Musisz
You have to
wprowadzić
act.
prostą
You have to
korektę.
change
Tego
that. This type of
Gorbaczov
support, I
zrobił
think, is
korektę.
needed. This is what
Naczelnik
Gorbachev did
państwa,
not
jak
do.
obojętnie jak on
The
się
head of
nazywa,
the state,
prezydent,
whatever his
sekretarz,
name is,
ma
the
tylko
president, the first
maksimum
secretary,
2
he should have
kadencje,
only
5
two
lat
terms of
maksimum.
office, 5 years plus
Nie ma
5 years
dobrych
maximum, as
wojny.
I said
Nie ma.
before.
Nie ma, trudno
Not
będzie.
as it is now in Russia or China. Once this is changed, I think if this message reaches the Russians, once they're convinced that there is a need for this change, much will change, I think, globally. Russia is a great country, as I said, but a very bad political system. I think Ukraine is going to overcome Russia to win in this conflict. I think we will have maybe a window of opportunity, 10, maybe 20 years. If we do not act decisively, Russia will be back and it will attack other countries again. So again, we have to act, we have to convince the Russians that the democratic ideas are very much in their interest. And the same is going to happen, I think, in China. You know what's happening in Russia. So many people dying there because of the bad political system in this country. So this is one way, I think, one possible approach. Television channels, radio stations, the internet, trying to reach common Russians, again, stressing that there is a very bad political system. Your President Putin can do whatever he wants with the Russian citizens. This is one approach, I think, again, focusing on propaganda, not tanks. And another possible approach, as you know, Russia was built by strength. New nations were joining by force Russia. And again, we have to also show, I think, some of those nations, you had your country, your ancestors were killed, moved by Russians to Siberia or to other regions. Think about your heritage. Russia did so many bad things to those different countries that are now part, or regions that are part of Russia today. We have to find maybe old maps and say clearly that yes, there were nations living in this part of the big country, and many people were murdered, forcefully removed to other parts of Russia. You should remember about this heritage, I think. This is the way we should address those minorities in Russia. I think that's another possible approach. So again, as I said, our trade union, we had no single tank, no guns, but we were able to overcome and win with the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact. They had nuclear weapons, rockets in Poland, but step by step, in a peaceful way, we managed to win. But this was, again, as I said, just the first step. And now the second step, up to you, your wisdom, your democratic traditions, also your money is very much needed for us to move forward, building a new world. We in Poland do not have such long democratic traditions. We are still learning. Well, our Polish democracy, it's not perfect, as you all know. We need years, we need decades of experience. This is what you have. So again, I stress that this is up to you. We have prevailed as Solidarity Trade Union, but again, next steps are needed to be taken by you.
Thank you very, very much, President Wałęsa. I have a number of questions now on my screen, but perhaps looking to London or New Delhi, I'm not sure where he presently sits, and the person who has sent me the question is Mr. Mahinda Kari. He's the chairman of the Indo-Global Academia Alliance, and he has sent me a number of questions. One you have already expressively answered. What advice would you give to the Russians and the Chinese citizens to attain a more democratic future? I think that you have really been touching already. But the second question, perhaps, I would like to bring in. Sir, you reduced the Iron Curtain to a mere paper curtain and brought many parties to the negotiating table. Which of your measures and decisions was the most important one?
Well, of course I remember about the past, but maybe what is even more important is the future. What I can still do. Again, I'm stressing what I said before. Please act. This is my appeal to the whole democratic world. Please take action. Please help us. In the old days, well, the world was not ready, I think, for change. The Soviets moved away from Poland, other countries. It was difficult. I had to move step by step. Madeleine Albright convinced me very much about the best approach, and I'm very glad that I actually listened to her advice. But this was about 40 years ago. Well, again, I appeal to you, please continue this action. The world is beautiful. It's going to remain so beautiful, but new ideas are needed. We have to find people who are experts. Again, I stress that you have better experience, better knowledge, better resources, you as a free democratic world. Well, it would be better, of course, for Poland to have more funds available, to have better democratic institutions. That's why I travel around the democratic world, appealing to you. Please help us. Demagogues, populists, yes, they are winning elections in different countries because, well, we have our internal problems. We, unfortunately, elected some of those political parties. So I appeal to you again, make people responsible. Responsible elections, responsible choices are very important. And we got it wrong in Poland. We elected in free elections populists, unfortunately. We are, well, a democratic country. We are not going to have riots in the streets, but as you know, the populists are distributing money, giving privileges to different people, but you cannot move in this direction. Sooner or later you have to stop. Well, if we don't succeed in the next elections, there might be actually a civil war in Poland. People in Poland will get angry with those people in power today. We don't want such conflicts, of course. Hopefully we are going to have people taking more responsible choices in the next forthcoming elections. People simply have to be aware of the consequences of those choices. Well, one word of apology, perhaps, if I can. I'm feeling more and more tired. Maybe if what I was saying was not quite correct or not as good as I thought, but, well, you have asked so many questions. It's not the first meeting today, meeting with journalists, another meeting. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a bit tired. Hopefully we are going to meet again, and I promise I will do better when we meet next time.
You couldn't do better. Let me look to our friends at UC Berkeley to conclude the session. Now the last word is with our friends in California.
Very good. Well, thank you, Andreas. Since you give us this opportunity for one last question from my part, then maybe a quick question that I like to ask as director of the Institute of European Studies.
You're saying last question. Do I look so bad that this is going to be the last question to me? Perhaps there will be a time for another meeting. It should not be, or doesn't have to be the last question.
But thank you so much. Now, as director of the Institute of European Studies here in Berkeley, there's a question about European identity I like to ask whenever we meet guests from Europe. And as you know, there's an ongoing debate in Europe on what it means to be European, what is the core identity of the European Union. And my question to you would be the following, right? This is a difficult question, right? What does it mean to be European? What does it mean to be a citizen of the EU? The EU is an institution with 27 member states. We all know that there's important cultural and social differences between Poland and countries like Portugal or Austria or Belgium. Yet all these countries are member states of the European Union. They all share the same EU flag. So in your personal opinion, President Wałęsa, what would you say is it that unites the citizens of the European Union? What would you define as the core characteristic of European identity?
You are a very young man, but I think this approach you have presented very much is an old-style approach, because again, those differences I mentioned are very much related to the borders, conflicts, military conflicts. We're building borders between countries, but now we have a new technology. This technology develops and cooperation at a high level is needed. So I think this new approach is very much needed, where we have to think not at the level of countries. This is necessary, I think. We have to build in many different areas, and this is what brings us together, I think, in Europe, that we are building a common Europe because we realize that we are not able to solve problems at national levels. Faced with the pandemic, perhaps the next pandemic is going to be even more serious. We will not be able to succeed if we are not well prepared globally. So the right, the left, political parties, these are the old divisions. They do not fit into the world as it is. So I think we should move away from this approach, national approach, thinking about individual countries, but we have to build such structures at the European Union. We are coming together because we realize that there are challenges for all of us. We have been given a cross to carry by God, and this is our cross that we have to carry to overcome the old divisions and build a new world. We should not think too much about the past, perhaps, but to remove barriers, obstacles, but to talk and think about best solutions for the future. Well, in Poland, we are not able to afford perhaps some of those actions, but again, I stress that we should move away from thinking about individual countries, but about what brings us together. Different religions, military conflicts in the past, but now our approach is changing. There is one God for everyone. God has different names, of course, but there is one God for everyone. And if we don't create divisions, religious divisions, I think we are going to be able to create a better, more logical order. We will create a more logical order of the world. We are just starting. Our generation is just beginning. There are many problems, but I think in Europe we have shown clearly that there is a lot that brings us together in Europe. We are now friends with such countries as Germany, for instance. You know, the difficult past, the conflicts between Poland and Germany, but now we are working together. This is necessary. During different discussions and different discussion panels, there are different voices presented. Some people say that in the past the Egyptians were able to build pyramids. Now it will be difficult for us to build pyramids in the European Union because of the different institutions. Too much discussion, of course, joking. But what are we going to do? How to build those pyramids, how to continue, how to build a better future for all of us. Well, of course, Putin can push a button and we can damage and bring end to the civilization, to life on Earth. In theory, this may happen, hopefully not, but maybe there will be another civilization that will send new Adam and Eve to us and we will have to start from scratch again. Maybe this is what is going to happen. As a revolutionary, I need to be aware that such a solution is also possible, hopefully not. But well, we are discovering all the time things we don't understand yet. Science has so much to do. Also thinking about the past. So again, let us be very careful. We do not want to bring an end to life on Earth. So let us find solutions, let us talk, present different arguments. Then, if we agree, we will start the process of the construction of the new world. We are talking at the moment, but the next stage, I stress again, we have to create a new reality. What is most important today is to find solutions at the levels of continents and the global level. This is simply the way in which the world is changing. Fewer and fewer divisions, better technological development. So, well, again, as a practitioner, I think I understand that. Those that focus on theory, they are very often experts, but maybe it's too theoretical. I have nothing against theory, of course, but I'm always trying to focus on the practical side. Of course, using some theoretical models, but always opting for practical solutions. I remember decades ago, I started Solidarity fight, but those that paid more attention to theory, they said, no way to change the world. The Soviet Union will never change, will never disappear. But again, as a practitioner, I was coming up with practical solutions. I stress it again. Let us sit together. Let us think about challenges, what we can do together. You will say what you think, I will say what I think, and then we have to come up with some solutions. This, in my view, is the logical way for us to move forward. Again, practitioners can see it, some more involved in theoretical models, maybe a bit less. Well, Lenin, Marx were very wise people, but well, the ideology, maybe it was good on paper, but it was impossible, of course, to put into reality. Again, as a practitioner, why should I use the theory that cannot be translated into practice? But yes, we can have good ideas, excellent ideas, but some people simply forget that they are impossible to implement. I stress again, there are many wise people in Western Europe who think that maybe some communist ideas might be good, but they still do not realize they are not practical at all. Amen.
He said, "Amen." Now I am a very, very difficult role. We have been mentioning and discussing the role of populists. I am now in a very unpopular situation to conclude this session, this live talk. We have overexploited your time and the time of our friends in Berkeley and of the audience on our live stream. Now let me express a joint, very, very warm gratitude to our distinguished guest of today, to the founder of Solidarność, Nobel Prize winner.
Ponieważ pan dotknął to Solidarności, to chcę
Well, as
powiedzieć,
you've
bo wiele się
mentioned
zastanawiam,
solidarity,
dlaczego dziś nie
many
ma
try to
Solidarności?
think about why we don't have this movement today. No solidarity trade
Solidarność
union,
była możliwa,
no
kiedy
solidarity
mieliśmy
movement in
wspólny
Poland.
mianownik.
Well, the answer is similar.
Komunizm i
We
Związek
needed to have
Sowiecki.
more in common.
Jedni kochali Związek Radziecki,
Solidarity was
drugi nienawidzili. Ale to był
possible when divisions were very
mianownik.
clear. Some loved,
W
some
liczniku
hated the
mieliśmy
Soviet
różne
Union.
interesy.
Yes, there were many
Jedni
people
za, drudzy przeciw.
fighting
Jak
for
rozwaliliśmy
against some
wspólny
ideas,
mianownik,
but once we
no to zostały interesy.
are now in a different world, there are different interests, many different divisions.
Czy jest możliwa Solidarność?
Is
Może się
solidarity
wytworzyć
movement
z wojny
possible again?
rosyjsko-ukraińskiej.
Well, maybe
Może się wytworzyć Solidarność. Ale inaczej jest
in the context
niemożliwa
of the
Solidarność, bo
Russian-Ukrainian
nie mamy
conflict, maybe new
wspólnego
solidarity could be
mianownika.
created.
Rozbiliśmy
But again, we do not
komunizm,
have as
Związek
much in
Sowiecki,
common as we did in the
straciliśmy
past.
wspólny mianownik.
The Soviet Union is
Liczniki
gone.
różnych interesów.
What brings us together is gone, or used what brought us together in the past. That's why. So, well, do not say too much because I will simply feel that I have to make some more comments again. And I apologize again. I'm really, really tired. I apologize if what I'm saying is not really clear. I'm doing my best. Maybe I was not precise enough in all the comments, but next time perhaps we have to change that slightly. Maybe this meeting should be the first meeting early in the morning, and the other meetings will be held in the afternoon. Because yes, as you can see, I'm getting very much into this discussion, and I'm really feeling very tired.
At least I, myself, and I think many people, many spectators in the audience have tears in their eyes. So at least do I. You couldn't have done better. Let me conclude this session. Let me express to our friends at UC Berkeley, at the Institute of European Studies, Jeroen de Wolf, the Institute of Slavic, East European and Eurasian Studies, Jason Wittenberg, our interpreter who has done a wonderful job, Bartosz Walicek, our friends here at the studio at Tyrol TV. Thank you very, very much. And now the final gratitude goes to you, President Wałęsa. Thank you so much. Still having tears in my eyes.
Liczę, że pan jeszcze zaprosi.
Well, I hope there will be another invitation coming from you. I would love to meet you again.
More than pleased to really pick up this invitation again.
Tylko śpiesz pan się, bo ja mam 80
But
lat.
remember, I'm almost 80 now, so maybe it has to be done quite
We'll
soon.
do it early. Thank you. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję bardzo. No nie tak źle. Dzięki.
Thank you very much.
Okay.